how do we brainstorm content together when we hardly see each other? And as soon as the show is over, we're all pulled in a million directions between sales and promotions and appearances. And a couple of the guys on the show just want to rush and get out the door. How do we brainstorm and how do we collaborate together when we are all busy wearing a lot of different hats?
Well, two things. One, how did we all collaborate during the pandemic when we were all stuck at home? I mean, we found creative ways to do it through technology and make it happen. It's a necessary part of the process. It cannot be cut out, that collaborative brainstorming and collaborative preparation. So you got to find a way. If you can't block out the time to actually do it, which is what you should do, you have to get creative with technology. I mean, I've got a show that's in that exact same situation, and that's what I've told them is, text and have a Google Doc that you work on together, email, whatever you've got to do to be able to communicate. You got to get creative.
Yeah, and oftentimes I find that's an excuse. I mein, yes, it's true. Everybody's wearing multiple hats nowadays. Time is at a premium, but I found that a lot of shows don't want to put the effort into. Part of this is work. It shouldn't feel like taxes, but it is some work. And it's part of the daily grind we talk about, but you can find a few minutes after the show to get together, do some creative stuff. And as Andy pointed out, you can have a working document throughout the day that you can add things to, text back and forth. There's really no excuse for not work. I mean, this is your show. This is your content. You got to put the effort in.
Well, and this is supposed to be the fun part. The creative part is actually the fun part.
I had that with a show this morning that has struggled with show prep, and we got into a brainstorming session, and they were laughing, and they came up with these great ideas. I said, "You're doing show prep. This is what you hate. You're doing it right here."
Yeah, I was on a call this morning as well that does a regular relationship feature almost every day. And we were talking about how we can make these more creative, make them more provocative, make them more interesting, create more emotional connections. And the comment was, well, we're working on tomorrow's. And I said, we should be working on a week from tomorrow's. If you're working farther ahead, then there's no pressure to knock out the content for tomorrow's show. If you're working farther ahead, you can relax, you can have that fun. But if you're staring at a run sheet for tomorrow and you've got a 4-hour show with 4 breaks per show, you got 16 pieces of content, and now you're filling slots instead of creating content and figuring out where that content's going to go. So get ahead of yourself on things that, especially things that are evergreen, like relationship features. You need to work a little bit farther out so you're not working for the show, making the show work for you.
And along those lines too, don't be afraid. You shouldn't have to create 16 pieces of content necessarily. I'm a big advocate of creating fewer, better pieces of content and then repurposing those.
Yeah, there's absolutely. And if you get a great topic with multiple angles, you can stretch that across 2 or 3 or even 4 hours by taking a different approach to that same angle. So play the hits. How often are you turning over your hits? Play them a lot. Do less, do it bigger, do it more, and pour more of your prep time and more of your creative time into doing fewer things, and you're going to have much better results. If anybody has a question, you can type it into the chat box now. A lot of you are still on watching. So if you've got a question about personality radio in general or anything, now is the time to type it in and we will answer those questions. Another question came in earlier about what do I do about a co-host who doesn't want to prep? All they want to do is respond on the air and do it spontaneously and naturally, and capture our natural emotions on the air. How do I get them interested in doing some of these things?
Yeah, I mean,
aside from smacking them.
Yeah. It just doesn't work. I mean, that's winging it, I mean, essentially. And yes, you can get some gems out of that every once in a while, but rarely does that ever work consistently on a level where you can actually win in a market. It just doesn't. You have to put in the work.
Yeah, I think, part of that could be too that you've got to make the process engaging and fun for that other person. So that would be the other thing I'm looking at. If you are staring at a run sheet and if you are filling slots, you're not going to get a lot of buy-in from your co-host who wants to want to do prep. But if you can make the process more creative, more fulfilling, and more fun, I think you might get that cooperation you're looking for. But you got to do it, to Andy's point.
And another angle is what you guys mentioned earlier, bringing other people in to get the brainstorming going. Like if you're stopped, bring somebody else in, and it also creates that fun environment where they'll probably want to participate.
Mike and I are working with a show that was pretty undisciplined in their prep process, and we had to get some discipline put in place. So we said, well, start sending us your run sheet every day. And they did, and we comment. Mike does it more than I do, but comments back on it for about 2 weeks every day. What about this? What about that? Just fine tuning it. The run sheet started getting better. The show started sounding better, and the ratings have skyrocketed in just a matter of weeks. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think the time spent preparing is directly proportional to the time spent listening.
Yeah, the first run sheet was like barely a page and not very creative. And then as we started getting them into the process and they started enjoying it and they started seeing the results on the air, I think the last one I saw was 2.5 pages and of good stuff too.
Yeah, and it's no longer a chore that I have to do because someone told me I have to do it. Now it's an integral part of the show. And yeah, that's so much of it. If you've got a co-host or a partner who just doesn't want to do it, and you can get them to commit to doing it and coming to the meeting and keeping the meeting short, keeping it fun, keeping it interesting, and get them to commit to doing it for 30 days, do it for 4 weeks. It takes about that long to form a new habit.
Yeah.
And if those meetings are 15 to 30 minutes, not an hour and a half to 2 hours, and it's fast paced and you start seeing that reaction on the air, that becomes a new habit before long, and it can be a good new habit. So ask for a little and maybe you'll get a lot. I see no more questions coming in. Jack Diamond, thank you for the comments. It's great sessions, guys. Thanks so much for your time. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Same back at you, Jack. Yep. Jack Diamond's a show that Mike worked with here in San Diego for many years.
Jack is great. Yeah, you talk about prep. There's a guy that really does put in the work.
Yeah, prep and connections in the local community. That's what Jack excels in.